All right, welcome to the 48th edition of Before the Battle. I am Nick Baldwin. Joining me as always is the man behind BestFightPicks.com and the host of Half the Battle. And I believe you're celebrating your 100th episode this weekend, Daniel. So congrats to you, Daniel Levi, back on the program as usual. Daniel, how's it going?
Well, I appreciate that, my man. It's going amazing. Obviously stoked to celebrate the 100th episode of Half the Battle, but more importantly, man, I mean, Bisping and Hendo are going to rematch. The first time they fought was the most vicious knockout in UFC history via punches. Via kicks, I'd have to give it to Edson Barboza over Terry Edom, but via punches, definitely Hendo over Bisping, and now they're going to do it again, man. Can't wait to see him run it back.
Yes, I definitely agree. It's a fun card. Go Paolo, writer for Sportsnet and Vendetta Fighter, will be joining us in a little bit. He's caught on the Toronto subway right now on his way home from work, so we will see how long it takes him starting now. The timer is started. We will see how long it takes, but he will be joining us. Hopefully, it seems like that's the plan anyways. Expect him to come in somewhere through the prelims, time-wise, depending how long we go. That's probably when he'll hop in here. But we'll start out UFC 204. It's pay-per-view card. Pretty fantastic card. A lot of people don't like it. Like the main event, Bisping Hendo. Does Hendo deserve it? Well, as Daniel, you mentioned off air a second ago, you shouldn't use the word deserve in the sport because it's not a sport really anymore. It's sport entertainment is what it is. So I don't have a problem with this main event. I love it. The card top to bottom, I really like as well. I mean, yes, you do have guys like Stefan Struve and Daniel Omelenchuk on the main card, and that's a bit iffy, but overall, the prelims is pretty solid. I like it. So let's dive right in with the first fight of the night, UFC Fight Pass early prelims. Lucas Sayevsky taking on newcomer Mark Diakis. Out of all of these newcomers we've seen as of late, the list goes on and on. Matt Lopez, blah, blah, blah. There's been a lot of guys making their debut, but this guy really stands out. It seems to most of the mixed martial arts fans, hardcore fans, and the community overall, it seems like this guy probably will go in there and pick up a win, do work against Wookie. Do you agree? Do you think Mark Diakis will pick up a win in his debut?
Well, I mean, on his regional scene fights, Diakis is no slouch at all. He can strike real well, and he can grapple too. He's athletic. He's explosive. He knocks dudes out, and he can suplex people as well. Sayevsky's, he's serviceable for the weight class, but, I think he's going to take another L. It's on short notice, but maybe he comes through since his back's against the wall and it is Diakis' UFC debut, but I got to go with the newcomer here.
Now, Go Paolo is hopping in. His screen is black, so I don't know if he can hear us, if he can see us. We can't see him. There we go. Now we can see him. Go Paolo, writer for Sportsnet and Vendetta Fighter, purposely coming in just a minute late, so he doesn't have to sit through all of this intro BS. Paolo, how's it going?
What's up, guys? Can you hear me?
We can.
You can? Okay, cool. Yeah, what's up? Sorry I'm late. Made it to party.
You did. And we are on the first fight of the night, so you didn't miss a thing. Lucas Sayevsky taking on newcomer Mike Diakis. How do you see this one playing out?
You know what? I'll be honest, I haven't done much research on Diakis yet, but Sayevsky's coming here on short notice. The weight cut, all of that stuff. I don't know. I don't think he's going to be that prepared for this fight. But then again, it's hard to pick a guy who I really don't know much of. So I'm just going to say no pick for now. But, I'll probably lean Diakis just because fighters coming on short notice don't usually do well.
Yes, I am leaning Mark Diakis here as well. I'm fairly confident. It seems like most people are pretty high on Mark Diakis after doing a lot of research. I admittedly haven't done a ton of research. I don't know a ton about him. He seems to be a very vicious guy on the feet, landing all sorts of knockouts on the regional circuit over in the UK and whatnot. So it's going to be interesting to see how he lives up to the expectations, but also makes his debut because their octagon jitters can be a thing. So, I mean, will they affect him? I don't know. I can't base my pick off that. I can't say, oh, Mark Diakis will for sure for this reason. I have no idea. He could. Maybe we see the best Mark Diakis. I don't know. Lucas Sayevsky, though, I mean, he's a guy that he came in here, has lost couple in a row. probably won't last in the UFC too much longer. And Mark Diakis, he seems like a really good fighter, or a guy that can become a very good fighter in the future, a top prospect overseas in the UK. So I'm going to go Mark Diakis, Bone Crusher. I think he'll probably put away Lucas Sayevsky rather quickly. Next up, we got Leonardo Santos and Adriano Martins. This fight is right in the middle of the Fight Pass prelims, but I've been seeing a lot of guys on Twitter, specifically Adam Martin, really hyping this fight up, and deservedly so, because this fight is a fun fight in the lightweight division. Paolo, we'll go to you. Which Brazilian do you like? I was going to say do you like the Brazilian or the other guy, but they're both Brazilian. So who are you picking here?
I like the Brazilian here. Well, what can I say? I think it's a surefire bet. Put all the money on them. You know what? I'm gonna go with Leo Santos here. Now, the thing about this fight is, the reason why I'm picking Leo Santos is because he just never gets any respect. You know what I mean? Against Kevin Lee, I think he was like, what, a 5-1 underdog or something. He was like one of the biggest underdogs during that whole fight week extravaganza, and he comes in there and starches him, and then he gets bet down against Tony Martin, and he ends up, I think, submitting him. The thing about Leo Santos is this: he came into the UFC, everyone was like, oh, he's this jiu-jitsu guy, and that's it. He's a jiu-jitsu guy, but his striking's been getting better. He's got good wrestling, and he's a good athlete, man. And the thing, you could pretty much say the same thing with Adrian Martins. This guy comes in there and knocks out Makhachev. I don't think a lot of people saw that. I think people were betting the over in that fight. He's got solid jiu-jitsu as well, and I think that loss to Donald Cerrone made him sharpen up his striking a little bit more. So this is a kind of tough fight. This is, in my opinion, this is closer than the odds indicate. If betting wise, maybe take a shot at Santos, but I'm just gonna pick him straight up to win this, probably by decision.
And Daniel, do you agree? Are you going with the approximately 2-1 underdog last time I checked anyways, Leo Santos, or do you think Martins can rebound, or not rebound, but get back into the winning column? I shouldn't say that, but he hasn't fought for a while. That's what I'm trying to say. Come back after a return, after a long layoff successfully. Do you think he'll do that?
They're both coming off layoffs, to be honest, man. But yeah, Leo Santos is no slouch at all. He definitely is, a little bit underrated. And that performance against Kevin Lee, no one expected that. And not only did he knock him out, he dominated him in every facet of that fight. The jab was beautiful. He had a blast double on Kevin Lee. He took his back, and then he knocked him out. With Adriano Martins, firstly, both these guys are jiu-jitsu world champions. But with Adriano Martins, that counter right hook is the nastiest thing I've ever seen in my life. And he's knocked out multiple people in the UFC with it. His only setback was to Cowboy Cerrone. And with Leo, officially he hasn't lost in a very long time, but I did think he dropped that fight to Norman Park. It was just a point deduction because of grabbing shorts. So, Norman Park won that fight. But Leo definitely got better with the Kevin fight, but I think he's coming off of surgery. He might not be fully healed, and I think Adriano Martins is going to catch him with that counter right hook. So I got Adriano Martins for the victory.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you here, Daniel. I like Adriano Martins in this fight. Both guys, as you mentioned, are coming off layoffs, so it will be interesting to see how Santos comes off the knockout. Well, both are coming off knockout wins, but just the layoffs and whatnot. We'll see how that affects them. Leo Santos is the better grappler out of the two, but I feel out of every type, all of the martial arts, whether it's standing up, on the feet, striking, grappling, etc., I feel the biggest difference in this fight would be on the stand-up, with Martins having the big advantage on the feet. Although Leo Santos did get that really, really slick knockout win over Kevin Lee, no one saw that coming. Maybe his striking is a lot better than we all think. I look at him and see, and now he did mix in his striking a little bit and catch Kevin Lee. Would he do that again? I don't know. It's hard to say a guy like Leo Santos is all of a sudden a knockout artist after that. Doesn't equal a knockout artist, in my opinion. Adriano Martins coming off, he's a banger on the feet. Just knocked out Islam Makhachev last year in his last fight. He's been looking good. Both guys have been looking good, but I think Adriano Martins can hang with Leo Santos on the ground if it goes there. As I said, Santos has the advantage, but not as big of one as Martins has on the feet. That's my opinion anyways. I think Martins, though, despite what I said about the grappling, will be able to keep it on the feet where he wants the fight to play out and pick up a decision win just by outpointing him on the feet with strikes, punches, kicks, etc. And en route to a pretty close, even fight, probably 29-28, maybe even a 30-27. We'll see. Next up, headlining the Fight Pass prelims. This is actually a pretty fun welterweight fight, one that I'm looking forward to anyways. Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts taking on Platinum Mike Perry. Daniel, are you going with Mike Perry here or the favorite?
Man, it's a tough one to call, but one thing I know is the fans are going to get their money's worth, so sign up to UFC Fight Pass because, I mean, these two are going to come to bang. One guy's going to go down. I'm not sure who it is. You know, with Mike Perry, he's kind of like a white version of Tyron Woodley, you know what I mean? He's super explosive. He's short. He's stocky. He's compact. He can close the distance before you know it. I mean, no one called him to knock out Hyung-Yu Lim in the first round, no less. But he's one of those first round or bust kind of guys. That's the only thing. You know, he's only been past the first round twice in his pro career. Back in the day, he actually has been put down, but he's gotten way better since then. So I don't know how much stock to put in that. But Danny Hot Chocolate, you know, he's more well-rounded, no doubt about it. You know, he's tapped out D1 wrestlers off his back. But the thing is, he's a slow starter. So if Mike Perry's going to win this fight, he's got to take him out early while you know, Danny's still warming up. But I think Danny is going to get past the early going, and he's going to drag Platinum into deep waters. I think Danny Hot Chocolate's going to get him out of there.
And Paolo, do you agree? Are you going with Danny Roberts here, or do you think Mike Perry can pull off the slight upset?
Yeah, you know what? With Mike Perry knocking out Hyun-Yu Lim, I didn't predict that, but you know, Hyun-Yu Lim, not exactly the most, defensive striker out there. I mean, that guy was way too reckless, and he paid for it. I mean, gonna give Mike Perry credit for that though, because that was a short notice fight, and he knocked out a guy a lot of people thought was going to run through him. But with Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts, he's a much better striker and much better fighter than Hyun-Yu Lim. So I think he has a slightly better chin. Dominic Steele was putting it on him, and I bet what's his name, Hot Chocolate there, and I was sweating that bet because I thought that Dominic Steele was gonna whoop him and finish him at some point, but he weathered the storm and won that fight. So that I put a lot of stock in that. For a guy like Danny Roberts, that was I think his second fight in the UFC. So yeah, I think he's gonna weather the storm from Mike Perry. Maybe he's gonna drop the first round, but by the second or third round, he's gonna have Mike Perry running for his money.
Yeah, I wasn't actually too impressed with Danny Roberts against Dominic Steele. He looked fantastic in his debut not too long ago, and then he looked a little he didn't
shaky.
Look fantastic. Yeah, I don't know how to describe it, but shaky is a good word. He didn't look fantastic against Dominic Steele. A step up in competition, maybe. I should have expected that. But one good thing we saw from Danny Roberts in that fight, among other things, of course, was that he can weather the storm. Dominic Steele, as Paolo mentioned, he did have Roberts hurt a little bit in that fight throughout 15 minutes. So we saw that Roberts has heart, can weather the storm, and that's what he needs against a guy like Mike Perry. I like how Daniel said that Mike Perry, he's kind of a one-rounder or bust type of guy. If he doesn't get you out of there in the first round, chances are he won't be looking too fresh in the second and the third round. Danny Roberts is a more well-rounded fighter, has the better cardio, and even if he wants to take this down to the ground, I think he can even tap out Mike Perry if that's what he wants. Standing with Mike Perry in the first round, considering, as Daniel said, he's kind of a slow starter, Danny Roberts, maybe not the best idea. Maybe try and get Mike Perry down to the ground in the first round and then stand and bang with him in the second and third. I don't know what Roberts' game plan will be, but I think he'll be able to do enough in the first round to weather the storm and pick up a decision win. Now, next up, we got a welterweight fight between Albert Tumanov and Leon Rocky Edwards. Daniel, do you like Tumanov here or Leon Edwards?
I think this one's kind of close, man, because it's striker versus striker. I understand why Tumenov's the favorite. And also I want to say, I heard a lot of people, saying that Tumenov got exposed because of his last fight, which I completely disagree with because, look, man, if you look at Gunny's last two fights, I mean, his physique was completely different in that Tumenov fight. All of a sudden, he looked like a welterweight, whereas before we were all saying, oh, this dude needs to drop the lightweight. Well, this time he looked like a welterweight, and, I mean, he's been clearly hanging out with Conor McGregor's strength and conditioning coach, if you know what I mean. But with that being said, this is striker versus striker, man. So no one needs to worry about the takedown in this spot. And if you recall that fight between Tumenov and Musoki, that was also striker versus striker. That was a very close fight. Even the Lorenz Larkin fight was very close. So I think this one could be close as well, man. I mean, Leon's a surgical striker. The only people that have given him problems are the people that take him down. So I've never seen him lose a striking fight before. So yeah, I think it's a very close fight. I'll go with Tumenov, but man, I would not be surprised one bit if Leon pulled this off, especially in the UK.
And Paula, what do you think? Are you going with the dog here, Leon Edwards, or do you think Albert Tumenov can rebound successfully?
Yeah, you know what? When I saw the odds, when I first saw this fight and I didn't see, and the odds didn't come out yet, I thought, oh, this is going to be close. Albert Tumenov is probably going to be a slight favorite, or it's going to be a pick 'em. And he shows up here and it's like, what, minus 250 or something insane like that now. I'm like, what? Like, look, Leon Roberts, this guy is a striker. That's his bread and butter. He's surgical, he's technical, and he's got some power in there, as what's his name, the Polish Pistola found out. And he's got the home cage advantage here. So if it's a close fight and Tumenov's not beating him around like he did to Joe Ban, then I could totally see a decision go for Leon Roberts here. I don't think Tumenov is gonna blow him out of the water there, because one thing Leon Roberts has is his fast, and if you're fast and you're technical, you're in a striking fight, I would say you've got the advantage there. You know what? Yeah, I'll pick Leon Roberts here. I think he's gonna pull off the, I want to say slight upset, but it's a 2-1 dog, so he's just gonna pull off the upset here, maybe by decision.
Who was it that? Who was it that was? Wasn't it the clown kid that got Dominic Steele? No, Steele and Dominic Waters and someone.
Yeah, that was funny, man.
Yeah,
John
I
Roberts.
remember.
Yeah,
Roberts, Leon,
like 5 times in a row.
Oh, yeah.
It's all good though.
I hope they don't fight each other then, because if they fight each other, I'm just gonna keep saying Leon Roberts and whatever.
Well, and then we got to go like fighter A versus fighter B. We can't even go with their names anymore if that's the case. But anyways, Leon Edwards, Albert Tumenov. This is a fun welterweight fight, and I mean, I was high on Tumenov, and I still am. But Gunnar Nelson, he definitely showed. He definitely outclassed Albert Tumenov in that fight back in May. Leon Edwards. This is a tough fight. I mean, Leon Edwards, he's a tough fighter to really look at, because, I mean, sometimes he looks fantastic, getting like 20-second knockout wins over guys like Seth Buczynski, and then he gets grinded out by Kamaru Usman. Albert Tumenov is not going to look to grind out Leon Edwards. They're gonna stand, of course, and I think that's where both guys are most comfortable. Albert Tumenov, I feel, has the power advantage, and overall perhaps a bit more technical on the feet. He's a bit of a, I don't want to call him a brawler, but he definitely has that sort of style. It's hard to explain. But Albert Tumenov, I'm still high on the guy. Yes, he did get beat pretty decisively by Gunnar Nelson in his last outing, but I think he rebounds successfully, though. He'll learn a lot, and it's not like that. It's a similar style matchup whatsoever. Leon Edwards is not going to go and choke out Albert Tumenov. I'd be surprised if that happens. Albert Tumenov, I'm going to pick him here by decision. I think Leon Edwards will be able to tough it out, take whatever Albert Tumenov dishes out, take the blows, and of course weather the storm. But I do think he'll drop a decision. My pick here is Einstein by decision. Next up, we got Davey Grant and Damian Stasiak. Both guys fairly similar submission artists. Same record of 10-2. Their physical stats are pretty similar. Daniel, are you going with Dangerous or Webster?
Well, if Mark Goddard's reffing this fight, I'd say bet the house on Davey Grant, because clearly Mark Goddard is Davey Grant's biggest fan. So, if he's reffing that fight, bet Davey Grant. But if he's not reffing that fight, it might be kind of interesting, because Damian Stasiak's not a bad grappler at all. You take this guy down, he's attacking for omoplatas. You give up your back, he'll take it and choke you out. But I think Davey Grant's the bigger guy, and he came back against Chito Vera, with a little help from the ref, but he still won the fight. So, props to him for that. And, it's in the UK. Mark Goddard will be reffing the fight. So, Davey Grant, 30-27.
All right, and Paolo, Davey Grant or Damian Stasiak, who are you picking here in this fight?
Yeah, Davey Grant, I think he's the better wrestler. He's bigger, he's stronger, and he's pretty versed in jiu-jitsu, so I don't think Stasiak's going to put on a jiu-jitsu clinic. But, this is MMA, so anything can happen. But, yeah, I think he's going to win here pretty soundly by a dominant 30-27. And Damian Stasiak lost to Yao Tin Mesa, man, and I think it was in his hometown too. or in Europe. So anyone who loses to Yalcin Mesa when you're at home is an automatic fade for me.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. I am going with Davey Grant in this fight. I was pretty impressed with him against Chito Vera, and I know the Mark Goddard thing, there was some the reffing thing. I feel Goddard definitely put himself in the fight more than he had to, but that's another story for another day. Davey Grant, though, still, even if Mark Goddard wasn't there, he did look pretty impressive against Chito Vera, coming off a big layoff too. So I saw that. I mean, there's no ring rust whatsoever. I'm sure he was training hard. That wasn't an issue. Damian Stasiak, I mean, it's Damian Stasiak. Both guys are submission guys. Both guys excel on the ground, but Davey Grant, I think, will be the better grappler and the better wrestler here. I don't see any reason why you shouldn't pick Davey Grant here by decision. I think he'll be able to grind out Damian Stasiak, stay on top for 3 rounds, and probably pick up a 30-27 unanimous decision victory. Webster, if he's lucky, he might pull out 1 round, but that's only if he's lucky. Next up, we got Ian Entwistle taking on Rob Font. I really like this bantamweight matchup, a grappler versus striker. Rob Font, of course, more well-rounded than Ian Entwistle, who you could argue doesn't have a whole lot more than the 1 submission on the ground. Daniel, are you going with Ian Entwistle here or Rob Font?
Not only has Ian Entwistle never been past the first round in his UFC career, he's never been past the first round in his MMA career. And it's basically he taps you out with a leg lock in the first round or he quits in the first round. So, I mean, no matter what, it's going under 1.5 rounds. And no matter what, the fight is not going the distance. So it's about, is he going to tap him out with the leg lock or is he going to quit? I think he's going to quit. Rob Font, first round TKO.
And Paolo, are you going with Ian Entwistle here, the underdog, or do you think Rob Font gets back into the winning column successfully?
Yeah, you know what? It's pretty simple. That's why I like guys like Ian Entwistle. It's so simple to break down their fights. He's gonna go for those leg locks, and he either gets them and submits you like he did to Burchuk, or he isn't, and he's gonna get whooped like he got against Perez. And I think that's sort of what's gonna happen here. He's gonna keep diving for those leg locks. Font's gonna be ready for him because it's quite obvious what he's going to be doing, and he's going to pound him up, and he's going to lose. But though I can see why some people might take a shot at Ian Entwistle in something like DraftKings, because if he does win, it's going to score you a lot of points because he's going to be a first-round sub. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm going to agree and disagree. I think Ian Entwistle, I don't think he will get the first-round submission, but I don't think he will quit either. That said, I am going Rob Font here inside the distance, inside the first round. I think Ian Entwistle will go for the submission attempts right off the opening bell. Rob Font will know that. I shouldn't say this as a guy who's ever stepped in the cage, but I feel it would be easier than to prepare for Entwistle than some fighters because, I mean, as we said, he got the leg lock and that's about it. Rob Font, assuming he can defend that, he's had a month or two to prepare for that. I think he'll be able to defend and eventually just pound out Ian Entwistle in the first round. My pick, Rob Font by TKO in
Nick,
round. Yes.
You said, he'll have time to train for it. You're 100% correct. Not only will he have time to train for it, but he trained with the right people. He went to Joe Lozon, who we all know is a jiu-jitsu, specialist for MMA. And that guy's going to get him 100% ready for the leg lock. So, yeah, I agree with you, man.
Certainly. Next up, Brad Pickett taking on Yuri Alcantara in the bantamweight division. Brad Pickett coming off a win over Cisco Rivera. Yuri Alcantara has been out of action for a little bit, coming off the loss to Jimmy Altera Rivera, who at this point now is a top contender. So it's hard to not much shame anyways in losing to Jimmy Rivera. Daniel, are you going with Alcantara here, or do you think One Punch can continue his winning streak?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, man, there's no shame in losing to a future world champion in Jimmy Rivera, and who, like you said, is now a contender, but I've known this guy was a top 5 guy since he fought Marcus Brimage, you know what I mean? But with that being said, man, Yuri, man, I'm a diehard Yuri Alcantara fan. I mean, this dude, he beat Trinaldo back in the day. He beat Felipe Aranches. Like, he knocked out Ricardo Lamas. Like, he's been there. He's done that. On the feet, like, this dude has the reach of a light heavyweight. Throws big flying knees. His front kick is ridiculous. When he keeps that range, I mean, he can bust dudes up. He can blitz guys and get them out of there right away. Last time he went to Europe and he knocked out Von Lee in 25 seconds, man. But the biggest issue with Yuri is when he gets taken down, sometimes, he attacks with sweeps. Sometimes he gets back up, but then the times when he loses, it's because he chooses not to get back up. And I'm like, dude, I know you can get back up. And the times that I've lost bets on Yuri, it's because he acts like he doesn't know how to get up off his back. So Pickett, being that he is, later in his career, this could be his last fight. On one hand, I think he might go in there and try to stand and bang, which he is known for. But on the other hand, he might go in there like that Cisco Rivera fight and accept the fact that, hey, if I want to win this fight, I got to take this guy down. But with all that said, Yuri's putting in work at Greg Jackson's, and I think he's going to steamroll Brad Pickett. I actually think he's going to knock him out. So Yuri Alcantara for the victory.
Very interesting. Paulo, do you agree? Are you going with the slight favorite here, Yuri Alcantara, for the win? Or do you think Brad Pickett will continue his winning streak?
Yeah, no, can't really add much to what Daniel said. Broke that down perfectly, I should say. Yeah, I think he's going to knock out Brad Pickett here, man. I think this is going to be the shocker of the evening because everyone knows one does not simply knock out Brad Pickett. I mean, it took like what, a crazy flying knee from Thomas Almeida, and to knock him out, and he got back right up after that. But I think his chin's been beaten up a couple of times. He was contemplating retirement. I mean, if he did lose to Cisco Rivera, he was going to retire. And I think this might be his last fight. I think Yuri Alcantara is going to knock him out and retire him.
I am going to pick Yuri Alcantara here, but this is a very, very close fight in my opinion. Brad Pickett arguably has more tools to beat Yuri Alcantara. I think he can still trade with Alcantara, land a blow, and knock him out. I think that's a possibility. Brad Pickett always game on the feet, and like Daniel kind of mentioned, like the Cisco Rivera fight a little bit, he can grind out the win. I still think Yuri Alcantara will be able to keep the distance. He does have a slight reach advantage, 3 inches, and a 3-inch height advantage as well. I think he'll be able to keep the range a little bit, keep the fight where he wants it on the feet, outstrike Brad Pickett. I don't think we see too much happen in this fight in the sense of huge moments, big blows, guys getting rocked and things like that. And I think it'll be a fairly technical fight, one where Brad Pickett just struggles to find his range. Yuri Alcantara will look good, not fantastic, but Alcantara is too inconsistent, in my opinion, to be picking him like by knockout, even though it's Brad Pickett, and I do like Brad Pickett, but he's definitely on his way out. Alcantara is too, though, so it's definitely a coin toss fight for me. One of the closest fights, if not the closest fight on the card for me, but my coin lands on Yuri Alcantara very slightly by unanimous decision. Next up, kicking off the 5-fight pay-per-view main card of UFC 204, we got Mirsad Bektic returning finally against late replacement Russell Doan. Initially, he was supposed to fight what's his name? Mind blank right now. Before Jeremy Kennedy. Arnold Allen, there you go. He was supposed to fight Arnold Allen, and that was a very, very fun prospect for his prospect. Up-and-comer versus up-and-comer matchup. Same thing with Jeremy Kennedy when he filled in. Jeremy Kennedy, unfortunately, had to pull out the day that fight was announced, just last week, earlier this weekend, whatever. Russell Doan steps up on short notice, 4 or 5 days notice. Mirsad Bektic, I without looking at the odds, I would imagine a big favorite here. Daniel, it's pretty hard to not pick Mirsad Bektic here. Do you favor him against Russell Doan?
I do favor him, but he's a minus 800 favorite. So if I had to make the case for Russell Doan, I mean, what I would say is that Mirsad hasn't fought in 2 years, and last time he fought was before USADA. I'm not insinuating anything by that. That's just a fact. And he's known for his blast double, and he can bust dudes up on the feet too. But he's coming off 2 ACL surgeries, so we don't know if we can expect that same guy. Maybe he comes back as a better version of the guy that we once knew. And with Russell Doan, he's moving up from bantamweight on short notice. So I don't know what kind of shape he's in. I just know that in his last fight, even though he lost, he looked better than he's ever looked. I mean, for the 2 minutes that it lasted, I mean, he was busting up Pedro Munoz with those kicks. It's just Munoz, he grabbed that guillotine out of nowhere. You can't even train for that setup. It was just a beautifully executed move. So it's about, is Mirsad, looking really good, or are the ACL surgeries affecting him? You got to lean toward with Mirsad, but since the line sucks, I'll have some fun and pick Russell Doan, man. I'm rooting for him.
Paolo, are you going WrestleZone, the big underdog here, or do you think Mirsad Bektic continue his winning ways in his return? Paolo, your mic's muted.
My bad. As I was saying, I'm going to pick Mirsad Bektic, but I'm barely even going to break down this fight. I'm just going to talk about Russell Doan and Mirsad Bektic here. The thing about Russell Doan is I've always been high on him as a prospect. It's just that he always gets matched up against other prospects, and he usually loses. The only fight where he was disappointing in was can't remember the name of the guy right now, but he was like a big favorite there. I think like a 7-1 favorite, and he ends up losing because, Jared Saunders, there you go. And he ended up, I don't know, messing up some positions and got caught. Got caught in the bottom. It's just one of those things. And then he fights Pedro Munoz, and Munoz is a really good fighter too. And he ends up losing to who's the other guy he lost to? Yuri Alcantara, which arguably he could have won that fight. I thought he could have won that fight, but it was in Brazil. And he's in a tough spot here again because Mirsad Bektic is a really good prospect, but he's been out for a while. His knees are shot. And it's really hard to lay 7-1 juice on a guy like that. So there's a chance Russell Doan could win here, but I'm going to go with Bektic here. I think he could at least use his wrestling if all else fails.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident in Mirsad Bektic to get the job done. The only thing possibly getting in the way of Bektic by demolition would be the injury and the layoff. He suffered an injury. I believe it was ACL, as Daniel mentioned. So it's definitely a severe injury, and you see guys all the time come off these types of injuries and layoffs, and they don't look themselves till the next fight afterwards. So, could that be the case with Mirsad Bektic? Probably. We might not. There's a good chance we don't see the best Mirsad Bektic that we saw in his last fight. Russell Doan arguably could have been cut against Pedro Munoz. He probably would have been if he wasn't willing to step up here as well. Props to him. Moving up to featherweight from bantamweight, as Daniel said, it's hard to say what shape he's in. Size disadvantage going in. Just taking this fight on short notice. It's hard to prepare for a guy like Mirsad Bektic on 4 or 5 days notice. As I said, I give props to Doan, but I think this is Mirsad Bektic's fight to lose by far. I think he'll probably steamroll Russell Doan. I got Mirsad Bektic here by first round knockout. Now, next up, we got Stefan Struve taking on Daniel Omielanchuk. It's happening. It's a heavyweight fight. Paolo, are you going with Struve or Omielanchuk?
I'm going with Struve here, man. Now, the thing is, there is a path to victory against Stefan Struve. You wrestle him and you keep him there and beat him up, and you're probably going to beat him. Or you outstrike him. Actually, no, one does not simply outstrike Stefan Struve. He outstruck Stipe Miocic and he turned Alistair Overeem into a wrestler. So that says that this guy's a pretty legit and underrated kickboxer. And man, I just see a knee coming in for Struve here. I think Omielanchuk's gonna go spam that takedown a little bit too much. Gonna go to the well a bit too much, and he's gonna get caught with a big knee because I think Omielanchuk's one of these small fat heavyweights, if I'm not mistaken. And Struve is the opposite. He's this tall, lanky, freaking heavyweight. And those guys, they have long legs. When you get hit by one of those knees, you're gonna go down, and Omielanchuk's gonna go to sleep.
All right, Daniel, are you going with Stefan Struve or Daniel Omielanchuk in this heavyweight matchup on the main card of UFC 204?
I think I'm going with Struve because he's finally using his reach, which we've wanted him to do for such a long time. But I wouldn't be surprised to be disappointed here, man, because, Daniel has an iron chin, but, man, he's got a suspect gas tank. I'm going to go with Struve by knocking him down and then taking his back and choking him out. But I wouldn't be surprised if Dan pulled it off. I got to root for the dude named Daniel.
Yeah, it's pretty brave of you to go against the Daniel. That's not Daniel Cormier. Stefan Struve against John Jones. Stefan Struve, I am picking him here in this fight, but like everybody picking Stefan Struve, or like everybody should be anyways, I'm not confident because Daniel Omielanchuk, he did look pretty good in his last fight, although that was against Alexei Oleinik, who did not look himself at all, if you will, the ghost of Alexei Oleinik coming off the layoff. It's hard to put much into Daniel Omielanchuk's game. Nevertheless, his last name, Stefan Struve, he's been using his reach a little bit more. We saw in the Big Nog fight a little bit. You can't take anything away from the Bigfoot fight. That was like a 10-second knockout, and it's Bigfoot. Stefan Struve, though, I'm going to hope he'll be able to keep the distance against Daniel Omielanchuk here. I think he will be able to enough pick up a decision win, keeping the fight where he wants it, surprisingly, I guess, for once. But if Daniel Omielanchuk is smart, he will bull rush Stefan Struve, kind of like Jared Rosholt. Go for the takedown. Make this a grinding fight. Don't worry about getting a bonus. Don't worry about making this fighting exciting. Just go in for the decision win like Jared Rosholt did back in November of last year. But I don't think he'll be able to close the distance. I got Stefan Struve here by decision. Next up, we got a pivotal light heavyweight matchup between Ovince St. Preux and Jimmy Manuwa. This is a fight that I feel like it should have happened not years ago, but a year ago. It feels like both guys are similar. Both guys are at similar points in their respective careers. OSP, Jimmy Manuwa. Daniel, who are you picking?
Got to go with my boy OSP here. You know, I think OSP is kind of like the Alex Cowboy of the light heavyweight division, or, you know, Alex Cowboy is the OSP of the lightweight division. Basically, they're both super unorthodox. They're big for the weight class. They're tough to deal with. It might look ugly at times, but they know how to get it done, especially against non-top 5 guys. And this is a non-top 5 guy. With Jimmy Manuwa, you know, he's an aging competitor, but he is a good striker. He's clean on the feet, but I still feel like he's trying to figure out the whole MMA game, how to put it all together. You know, most of his wins are via, you know, some kind of injury, which, you know, credit to him. He hits hard, right? He injures dudes. But the guys that he injured, you know, I don't want to discredit his wins because they were impressive, but, you know, none of those guys are in the UFC, and they were all, you know, old aging competitors as well. The one guy he beat that was in the UFC was that, you know, close decision against Jan Blachowicz. With OSP, I mean, this is a guy that finished Nikita Krylov via Von Flue choke, you know what I mean? And he went all 5 with John Jones. I got to go with my boy OSP here. I think he's going to finish Jimmy Manuwa in England.
That said, that was before Nikita Krylov was the GOAT, just to make that clear. Paolo, are you going OSP or Jimmy Manuwa?
Yeah, I'm going to go with OSP here. I think he's going to continue a trend with English fighters getting knocked out in England. Jimmy Manuwa, he's a striker, but he's a striker with one big flaw, and that's not having a good chin. I don't think his chin is that good, and it's been cracked a couple of times. Gustafsson cracked it, Rumble cracked it further, and OSP, he's got some serious power, man. Because he's so unorthodox, he might just throw something in there that Manuwa never sees coming, and he's gonna go to sleep. So OSP by knockout.
I'm going to go Ovince St. Preux here, but I don't think he'll knock out Jimmy Manuwa. I know you can say Manuwa doesn't have a great chin. Both his last 2 losses last year and the year before were by knockout, but that was against Anthony Rumble Johnson and Alexander Gustafsson before Gustafsson took a beating to Rumble and probably changed his fighting career forever. I don't think OSP will knock him out, but I do think he'll win in decisive fashion. I think he'll win a fairly dumb decision. I think he can definitely stand with Manuwa on the feet. I think Manuwa is a bit more crisp on the feet. But both guys have power, and at this heavy of a weight class, power almost is what counts more. OSP, he's a tough fight to call coming off the loss. He's a tough fighter to break down. It's very unorthodox, as you guys mentioned. Coming off the loss to John Jones, can't take a whole lot away from that. He didn't get finished, so that was good. Before that, beat Fei Zhao. Nothing super impressive. It's been a while since we've seen OSP look fantastic, in my opinion. I guess the Patrick Cummins fight, if I'm not forgetting something else. Jimmy Manuwa, though, he's been out for a while, over a year now, and before that, it was a while. It's really tough to trust Jimmy Manuwa at this point. So for that reason alone, I'm going to go OSP, the more active fighter, a slightly more skilled fighter as well. OSP by decision. Next up, we got the co-main event of UFC 204. We got number 5 middleweight Vitor the Phenom Belfort taking on number 9 Gegard Mousasi. Daniel, are you going with the Phenom here, the former UFC light heavyweight champion, or do you think Gegard Mousasi pulls off the win?
You know, I don't really consider Vitor the former light heavyweight champion because if you know the circumstances about that fight, so 1 minute into the fight, he sliced Randy Couture with a thumb to the eye and then won the belt like that. And they fought 2 other times, and Randy Couture finished him those 2 other times. So, yeah, I don't consider him the former light heavyweight champ, but I do consider him the former heavyweight champ because when he knocked out, I forget if it was Tank Abbott or Scott Feroza or one of those guys, he won the tournament, man. So, former heavyweight champ, Vitor Belfort. But with that being said, man, in 2016, you got to go with Gegard Mousasi. He's in his prime right now. And with Vitor, man, what's so cool about him is that he literally fought in every era of the sport. He was in that era with Tank Abbott and them, and then he competed against like Chuck Liddell and Randy Couture, competed with Luke Rockhold and Anthony Johnson, and now here he is competing with Gegard Mousasi. So much respect to Vitor. You know, he always has that explosive blitz, but I think he's slowing down, obviously. You know, lots changed in the sport. This fight's not in Brazil. Gegard Mousasi inside the distance, ground and pound TKO.
And Paolo, do you agree? Are you going with the favorite here, Gegard Mousasi, or do you think the Brazilian can pull off the upset?
Yeah, no, Gegard Mousasi here. See, the thing about Vitor is why I also like bringing on Vitor fights. His fights are so freaking straightforward. If you stand and trade with Vitor, you're going to get knocked out unless your name is Anderson Silva or John Jones. And if you take him down, you're probably going to submit him or ground and pound him like what Jacare did, just like what Chris Weidman did, and which is what Gegard Mousasi is going to do. But just to make my pick different, I think Mousasi is going to armbar him.
I like it. Unique. Gegard Mousasi will win this fight. He will win this fight inside the distance. I like Vitor Belfort, but he's not the same ever since TRT was banned. And you saw it was brought in. As Daniel mentioned, this fight isn't in Brazil. And even in Brazil, he didn't look good. He did knock out Dan Henderson, but physically he didn't look like he did back in 2013. Vitor Belfort on the decline. Gegard Mousasi, he's been looking really good as of late. I know Thiago Santos, maybe not the toughest of competitors he's fought, but at the time, he was this up-and-comer who's now lost 2 straight. But Gegard Mousasi has won a few in a row now. His last loss was the loss to Uriah Hall, which I still believe if Gegard Mousasi fought him 10 times, he would probably win 9 times. Gegard Mousasi is my pick here all day. He's an underrated striker. He's very good on the feet. Vitor Belfort could blitz him. Gegard Mousasi, if he doesn't show up 100%, maybe his chin is off a little bit, like it perhaps was against Uriah Hall. I don't know. Vitor Belfort could knock him out, but that's his only way of winning this fight. Gegard Mousasi should be able to knock out Vitor Belfort in the first round. And next up, we got the main event of the evening. The UFC Middleweight Championship is on the line. And we got Michael Bisping and Dan Henderson fighting for it. I don't know how crazy you guys think that is, but that is nuts to me. Dan Hendo and Michael Bisping, one of them will be crowned the middleweight champion. One already is. Michael Bisping, Dan Hendo. Who will be the middleweight champion after Saturday night? Daniel.
Man, 2 times on the main card, I got to go against the guy named Daniel. You know what I mean? It's unfortunate. Dan Henderson's a total badass. I mean, how can you not love Dan Henderson? He's a pioneer, much respect, you know. But when we pick these fights, look, man, he's 46 years old. And I mean, how many 46-year-olds do you see competing in the octagon at the highest level? I know Randy Couture did back in the day, but that's about it, man. So much respect. I mean, we got to tip our caps to Dan Henderson. You know, this is his last fight, so it'll be an honor to watch him one last time. But unfortunately for him, I think Michael Bisping is going to knock him out. You know, Michael Bisping, the reason that he's knocking dudes out now is because he's sitting on his punches a lot more. And, you know, he's got that confidence of a champion now. Back-to-back wins over Anderson Silva and Luke Rockhold where he dropped both of them. That's a big deal, man. And he's going to either knock out Dan Henderson with a left high kick or a left hook. And it's going to probably be in the late first, early second round.
All right, now, Paolo, you are known when it seems outrageous to be picking some guys. You are known to pick these guys. Just off the top of my head, you picked Verdum over Kane. I don't know how confident, if confident at all you were. I believe you picked Hendo against Tim Bosch. Are you picking Dan Henderson become the UFC champion in 2016? Will he gain the middleweight title, or will Michael Bisping retain?
You know what? Let's go with Dan Henderson here. And this is more like a pick that's coming from the heart kind of thing. If Michael Bisping comes out there and starts Dan Henderson, no surprise at all. I think that's what the likely scenario is. When they last fought in, 2009, the year before you were born? I'm kidding. That was completely different Dan Henderson yet. He was still at his prime. He still had a solid chin. You know, he still had he was still his best form there, and now he's not. Every time he fights, regardless who he fights, he's like doing the chicken dance every time. Every time something lands on his chin, he's gonna get wobbled. He's gonna go down. And that fight against Hector Lombard, he came close to being finished there multiple times, but because he's Dan Henderson and he's a freaking legend, he survives and finishes Lombard with like a reverse elbow. I mean, a high kick reverse elbow combo there. So I think what's going to happen here is Michael Bisping is going to do the same thing. He's going to wobble him. He's going to rock him. He's going to drop him multiple times. And so Hendo's going to survive. And in the second round, history is going to repeat itself. He's going to land an H-bomb flush and knock Michael Bisping out and do what guys like Anderson Silva couldn't do and beat Michael Bisping in England. So Dan Henderson, your new middleweight champion of the world in 2016, man. You better believe it.
I like it. Now, this is a tough fight to call. Michael Bisping, Dan Henderson, it's still just so freaking crazy that one of these guys will be the middle champion after this weekend. It's not like Michael Bisping is fighting Jacare again, and there's a chance where Jacare will be champion, and that makes sense. One of these guys will be the champion, and that still is nuts. Even if Bisping retains, it's still nuts that he's the champion. If Hendo gets the title, that's even more nuts. But as far as the pick goes, this is a very close fight. Michael Bisping could go out there and start Dan Henderson. It's very, very, very possible. Then Michael Bisping, always discredited for his power, but we saw against Luke Rockhold. I don't care if Luke Rockhold was looking past Bisping, not taking that fight seriously. Maybe that was the case, but it doesn't matter. Michael Bisping, not taking a fight seriously doesn't make your chin weaker. Not a lack of defense will, of course. But at the end of the day, Michael Bisping has power. Just to clear that up for anyone that still thinks that Michael Bisping doesn't and has pillow fist. So he has power. He can knock out Dan Henderson. And if there's a guy that Michael Bisping can knock out, it's Dan Henderson, who, of course, doesn't have that good of a chin. And if there's a top 10 or top 15 middleweight that Dan Henderson has the best chance of beating, or one of the better chances of beating, it's Michael Bisping. Luke Rockhold, Weidman, Jacare Souza, Yoel Romero. I mean, Vitor Belfort is right there, even Anderson Silva. But after that, I mean, maybe it is a Michael Bisping. This is so tough. Could it play out like UFC 100? Dan Henderson landing the H-bomb? It could. Could it play out completely different, like Daniel thinking Bisping getting a knockout quickly? It could. I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to go Dan Henderson. I'm going to go Dan Henderson landing the H-bomb in this fight in the first round, repeating history. Give me Dan Henderson to become the new middleweight champion. I mean, it's a tough fight to break down in the sense that there's not a whole lot to break down. Dan Henderson will or will not land the H-bomb. Michael Bisping, I mean, he could land too. Both guys' chins are a bit iffy. Dan Henderson's more than Bisping's. But I'm going to go out on a limb. As I said, Dan Henderson is my pick to become the new middleweight champion. But I will add that I don't think he'll be the champion at the end of this year. I think he will vacate it, retire, and go off in the sunset. I remember calling for him to retire after the Dim Posh fight. If he does win on Saturday, I will be thankful that he didn't retire, because going off as a champion would be quite a bit better than going off with a win over Tim Bosch, especially in this day and age. So there you go. UFC 214 in the books. Dan Henderson versus Michael Bisping in the main event. Crazy, crazy fight. But I like it. I was calling it for it ever since Dan Henderson's win, ever since Big Bisping's win. So I like it. People can.
It's destiny. It's destiny, dude.
I know. People can hate on it, but it's a legendary knockout win for Dan Henderson back at UFC 100. Biggest card of ever, basically, up until this year. And we were going to see the rematch eventually, but who would have ever thought that it would be for the middleweight title?
Yeah. Like Michael Bisping is always like, it's my destiny, it's my destiny. Well, you know what it is? It's his destiny to be a transitional champion, because like you said, if there was any other guy Dan Henderson was going to beat to get that title, it was going to be Michael Bisping. And
of course,
as we saw right there, he knocks out Luke Rockhold in one round. Nobody ever saw that coming. So that was one of those weird MMA things that happened. And it's to set up Dan Henderson knocking him out to get the belt and ride off into the sunset, something no MMA fighter has ever done. Maybe arguably GSP, but he's coming back, so we'll see.
Right. And just to kind of add on to that, if Dan Hendo was fighting a guy like Luke Rockhold, Rockhold would probably maul him. But I feel Bisping is very good everywhere, but he doesn't stand out anywhere. He's good on the feet. Cardio is fantastic, of course. But if there's one guy that Dan Hendo can beat in the top 5, top 10, it's got to be Michael Bisping. Now let's move on to our DraftKings team and wrap this up. Paulo, the king of DraftKings, do you have a team ready to go?
Yes, I do. Now, the thing is, we didn't do DraftKings last time because I think they were going through changes, and now they went from five fighters to 6. Now, this is crazy, man, because it was already hard picking 5 winning fighters, and now you got to pick another one. But actually, last week, I ended up winning a bit of money. My only loss was, can you guess what, Nick? The guy you say never pick? Josh Berkman. Oh, yeah. Josh Berkman messed up my chance at winning lot of money because he was the only losing fighter on my squad. With that said, still won money, so I can't get it.
You should have trusted me, Paulo. You should have trusted me.
But Zach Otto, but yeah, point taken. Fade Josh Berkman. Even if he's fighting a punching bag, fade Josh Berkman. The punching bag will probably land on him and knock him out. Yeah. Anyway, DraftKings. Yeah, so I got Gegard Mousasi to beat up and submit Belfort. I got Davy Grant, in my opinion, might be the safest pick on here, but it's MMA. There's no such thing as a safe pick. But with that said, I got Struve to finish Omelianchuk, OSP to finish Manuel. I got 2 underdog specials here, Leo Santos, and of course, man, the H-bomb, Dan Henderson, who's one of the cheapest fighters on here.
All right, my DraftKings team is Dan Henderson, Danny Roberts, Adriano Martins, Davey Grant, Vincent Prue, and Mark Diakese. I'm not a huge fan of this update to DraftKings MMA because, I mean, like you said, it was already tough to pick 5 guys that you're confident in getting finishes, never mind just winning, but getting finishes. So that was tough already. Now picking 6 guys, it's tough. And I don't really get it because it was so nice numbers. Right in the middle would be 10 grand, and now it's like 8,300. It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I guess they wanted to make it harder, and they did. So there you go. That's my DraftKings team. And Daniel, I assume you don't play still. Still going for that sponsorship or partnership. Let people know about your bets and everything else, though.
I'm going big on Michael Bisping, man. I mean, I think he's going to do this thing. Look, Dan Henderson gets dropped every single fight. And, that's the bottom line. He gets dropped every single fight. So going big on Michael Bisping. Got some more plays up on bestfightpicks.com. More plays coming too, man, because I like this card, man. I know it's a lot of favorites, but they're rightful favorites. I think the odds makers got it right. So, sometimes you gotta pay a big price to get what you're looking for, and that's the case with this card. So, we'll get back on those underdogs soon, but here, gotta take advantage of an opportunity for sure.
And these are the types of cards where we're favoring almost all the favorites, or we're picking almost all the favorites, and then half the dogs cash. Cough, cough, Dan Hendo. Anyways, before the battle, UFC 204 in the books. Daniel, let the people know where they can find you on social media, your website, your podcast, and anything else you ought to plug in the world of mixed martial arts. Now's your time.
Yeah, absolutely. At Best Fight Picks on Twitter, bestfightpicks.com. My podcast, Half the Battle, is on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube, and I'm celebrating the 100th episode on Thursday, tomorrow. Got myself, James Vick, Sean Carey, Albert Morales. We're going to be breaking down UFC 204 in depth. Cannot wait. Thank you, guys. 100th episode. Pretty stoked. At Best Fight Picks. Good talking the fights with y'all.
You as well, and congratulations again on 100. Paolo, let the people know where they can find you on social media, your writing, anything else you got going on in the world of mixed martial arts.
Yeah, you can find me at Go Paolo MMA, like it says down there. I've got an article coming out for Roger Sportsnet that I'm doing. It's going to be rematches that ended up very differently, focusing on Michael Bisping and Dan Henderson, because Dan Henderson knocked out Mike Bisping that time around. Maybe this time Mike Bisping knocks out Dan Henderson. Strange. It could definitely happen. Check that out at Roger Sportsnet at Sportsnet. Vendetta Fighters back. I'm not doing work for them at the moment because I'm trying to come up with some projects right now. I'm not mentioning them because I have nothing really to show for, but stay tuned for that.
All right, there you go. You can find me on the Twitter at NickUFC as always down to chat about MMA and anything you want to chat about. You can find my writing at bloodyelbow.com. I recently released an interview piece with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, talking about the Tyron Woodley fight, things like that. So check that out. That was published a few days ago, so just search Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, Bloody Elbow. You'll probably find it. Had one on John Lineker missing weight yet again back last Saturday. So scroll down a little bit and you'll find that. Go check that out. A bit of an opinion piece, something I don't do a whole lot. So I'll always try new things. I have an interview piece on Zach Otto coming out. Should be tomorrow. Again, it's a bit different, not the typical interview piece that you'll see from me. It's a bit different. So please check that out if you can. My other podcast, The MMA Circus, I hosted each and every week with Andrew the Clown Kid Lawrence. This week, episode 79, we had the UFC heavyweight champion Stipe Miocic on the program, and we had the World Series of Fighting president, Mr. Ray Seffel. So check out episode 79 of the MMA Circus, up yesterday on bloodyelbow.com. No, up today on bloodyelbow.com. So check that out. Two guests, Stipe Miocic and Ray Seffel. As always, thank you guys for watching, and with that, enjoy the fights.